Welcome back, everybody. I don't know if you've checked your calendar. It is a Tuesday night, and we're back. It's exciting. We got good things planned tonight. We've got a special guest on one side. We've got a Canadian on the other side. As long as the internet hamster sticks up, we're going to have fun tonight. We're going to be talking free agency. We're going to be talking all the fun fantasy info to fill up your Tuesday night with joy, I guess. But before we get into that, if you guys haven't already, do all the things I tell you to do in every single video. Like, subscribe, hit the notification icon. Check out rotoheat.com. Check out rookiedraftguide.com. We can fill your day up with content. You just give us your time. But without further ado, we have a special guest. I don't know if all of you guys know him yet in the community, but you're gonna, because we love these guys and we are going to do as much as we can with them. Our boy Simon. I will give the mic to you. Tell everybody about yourself. Tell everybody where they can find you and tell everything about Front Yard Fantasy.
For sure. Thanks, Brad. As he said, my name is Simon. I'm from Front Yard Fantasy. My co-hosts John, Luke, and Josh, and then G-Man J works with us as well. What we do, we go live every day at 3 p.m. Eastern playing what we call the Fantasy Football Game Show. Sully's come on, got beat down. Rick's come on, he got beat down too. We're just waiting to get the trifecta, beat Brad on the game show. But we play fantasy football related games. We've got a couple different ones that revolve around polls, ones that revolve around just some general trivia. We do brackets. It gets competitive. It gets a little angry, a little heated sometimes, but we have fun over there doing it. Our vision for what we're doing over there is we just want to create a space for fantasy fans, fantasy content creators, people in the fantasy industry, and everyone who plays to come together and have a place to hang out, talk fantasy, talk trades, and play some games together. You guys can find us on YouTube at Front Yard Fantasy and also on Twitch at Front Yard Fantasy. And then we're on Twitter at Front Yard FYF. And I'm on Twitter at FYF Simon. I think that's all the spots where you can find me.
Awesome. Well, we're glad you're on. It's exciting to be able to partner with you guys and help you, and you guys help us and do all those fun things together. It's going to be a cool time. And for those of you that haven't watched any of their stuff yet, they do. So far, I've seen Poll Perception, a lot of those. It's a blast. It's been unfortunate that Sully and Rick have let the RotoHeat community down, but you know what?
Wow.
You guys will have another chance, I'm sure.
It was a warm-up match. It was just their warm-up. They come in, or they were hustling us. They came in and lost, so that we would invite them back, and now they're going to come in and just take us down.
Mr. Sullivan, how goes tonight? I've been making fun of you, but tell everybody where to find you and do what you do, man.
Hey man, I am absolutely fantastic. I am pumped to be on with you two fine gentlemen this evening. I'm on Twitter. I'm at RotoHeat Sully on Twitter. I host a little solo podcast called Sully's 2 Cents. I dropped episode 132 earlier this week. I'm in our Facebook groups. I do a little bit of content creation for our rotoheat.com website. I'm just, hanging out and having fun and learning a little bit about fantasy as I go.
Well, and I do, funny side note, so I was listening to episode 132, and I do appreciate how you said Ryan Fitzpatrick was going to lead that Washington football defense, so that was fun. That was a good one.
Yeah, so I don't know if anybody ever does podcasts or not. So my average podcast, 25 to 30 minutes, takes me 2 to 2.5 hours to put out when you factor in all the editing. So if you nail it perfectly first time, you're at least an hour if it's a 30-minute podcast. And there's parts that I miss while I'm editing, and nothing pisses me off more than that. So it's like a typo on Twitter. It's annoying as hell. So thanks for picking that up, Brad, and calling that out. But more importantly, thank you very much for listening. Notice you didn't mention how I talked about your weak-ass Lions defense on that podcast as well.
Well, but everybody knows that. I mean, that's like kicking the kid that fell over already. I mean, that's not very nice. So I got to make fun of the other stuff, teams that are going to win.
Fair.
But check it out. I mean, and it's hard to do a solo podcast where you are just talking by yourself, but you do an excellent job at it. So for those of you that haven't listened to it, go listen to it.
I appreciate that 100%. And it's funny, it's solo because I don't have the confidence to do what the both of you do, and that's host. And you both do an excellent job at that. So it's easy to be the guy that just talks. So that's what I do. I just talk.
He's a talker. That's why we
talk.
Love him.
Talk.
All right. So tonight, like I said, we're gonna have fun and we're talking free agency. There has been a little bit of fairly fantasy relevant news the last few days. So we want to talk about it. I think it'll be interesting to get your guys' perspective because so far today, the news about Mike Davis signing with the Falcons on a 2-year, $5.5 million deal has kind of had a mixed return. Some people are like, "Oh, this is their starter this year. This is a back end RB1 potential type guy," and then the other side are like me. Well, they're going to draft their starter here in a few weeks, so no big deal. Who cares? Mike Davis has never been anything more than a backup. So, Simon, what's your take on Mike Davis signing? What's going on in Atlanta? What do you think about it?
When I first saw that news, again, my initial reaction was exactly what you said. I was like, "Oh, this is awesome," especially with the new head coach there, being Arthur Smith out of Tennessee. Like, we know he likes to run the ball. You see what he did with Derrick Henry. Now that being said, Mike Davis is not Derrick Henry. I don't think I even needed to say that. So the people getting too excited about him playing that role in this offense, I think, is a bit of an overreaction. If he stays the only running back in that backfield, I mean, I know we've got Ito Smith there fighting for touches, but if he stays what we assume to be the presumed starter, I'm still not as high as a bunch of these people are saying. I'm thinking like a RB2 flex consideration every single week. And that's about how I'm valuing him going forward. If like you're looking to trade for him, it's that back end RB2 role. And I think that's about his ceiling as well. I would never pay like RB1 prices to acquire him on a team right now, even if he is the standalone starter. And his value can only go down through the draft if they bring in another back. But as it stands right now, back end RB2, if they draft another person, he's going to fall way further down for me.
All right, Mr. Sullivan, what say you?
I'm a little bit more optimistic than the two of you party poopers. When I look at that backfield right now, and I totally agree with Simon that Arthur Smith is going to want to lean on the run. And it's an odd offense the way it's constructed to want to lean on the run. With that being said, Brian Hill, Ito Smith, Quadre Olison, and the other guy who I can't remember his name aren't going to do the job and get it done. They got a lot of holes on that team. They got a weak offensive line. They got holes all throughout their defense. So I look at this as an insurance policy for them. It allows them to wait till probably round 4 through 7 to add some running back depth. And no one really expects a whole heck of a lot out of this football team this year, I don't think. And you still have Matt Ryan. They're probably drafting a quarterback early, so we'll see what happens there. And you still have 2 of the top wide receivers in the game. So you're not going to run the ball as much as he's going to want to if he wants to win it all. But I will say this about Davis. He produced last year in a Carolina offense that was nowhere near as good as the offense that he's joining now. So he's at least going to get the odd chance to score a touchdown, more so than he did in Carolina. So I don't see him in the top 12. I see him nestling in. If he's the only back there and he's the bell cow, which I don't think he is, I could see him nestling in at about 18 to 24, but I don't have that much of high hopes for him. It's probably a super high RB3, back end RB2 in 2021.
Yeah, I mean, he's the perfect example of a bridge player at his position right now. Atlanta, Arthur Smith comes over from Tennessee. He obviously knows how to use big, powerful running back, give him a lot of carries. Mike Davis can shoulder that load, but I fully expect them to draft somebody. And it's probably not a day 2 pick. It's probably a day 3. You can get a nice quality running back round 4 or 5 and do something with him, especially, when you think about, I won't go too deep into the rookie weeds, but, like a guy like a Raheem Boyd from Arkansas, who's just kind of a big, powerful back, or somebody like that, Jarrett Patterson from Buffalo. I mean, there's a lot of options that Atlanta could go with. Yeah. So I really see Mike Davis as, okay, he's probably 1 year, maybe 2, because we know Ito Smith really isn't much more than, RB3 on the roster at best. Ollison's nothing special either, so it'll be interesting to see. I've seen a few trades go down so far today with Mike Davis involved, and it's really been, kind of mid-late second round rookie pick, and I kind of see that as his value. If you're a guy who's competing, mid-late second round rookie pick, if you need a running back, I don't hate it. I mean, I would probably rather just take the flyer on the rookie, but that's just because I'm not a Davis truther. So yeah. And then the other big piece of news, I don't know that it's necessarily a big piece of news yet because nothing's actually been finalized, but Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, it looks like they're working on a restructure of some sort. Typically restructures, you're turning money into upfront guarantees so that you can get some cap space and do some moves and things like that. But, if they restructure Aaron Rodgers and maybe even extended it all, what does this make you guys feel about the prospects of Jordan Love stepping up into the role of the quarterback for the Packers anytime soon? Do you think that the fences are mended between Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, or is he still a little butthurt because they drafted a quarterback in the first round? I saw the news and it made me wonder, well, what does it mean? So Simon, what do you think about something like that? Do you think the Packers and A-Rod are going to stay together for the long term? Is it?
Well, I think the Packers cheated on Aaron Rodgers, and now they got back together, and he's making them give him a promise ring. He's like, I need that promise ring, or I'm not going to stick around. That's what's going on right now. Aaron Rodgers says, you betrayed me once, but I need to lock this in. As far as Jordan Love goes, I was baffled when the Packers drafted him, like truly just couldn't believe it, and drafted him accordingly, thinking that Aaron Rodgers would be the starter for the next 2, 3, 4 years, and that's still how I view it. He just came off an incredible season. I don't think the Packers organization is that ready to pull the Brett Favre move again to try to get ahead of the curve, and they're going to push like one of the best quarterbacks in the game still onto another team. So I'm not high on Jordan Love. If he's going to be the starter on the Packers, it's 3 years down the line for me. I don't think it's happening. And in Dynasty, that's about the window I look at. 2, 3 years. I'm not looking too much further than that.
Smart. What about you, Mr. Sullivan?
I really think that the Packers were seeing the decline in Aaron Rodgers when they read the tea leaves, and that's why they made the mind-boggling draft choice that they made last year. And his contract, as it's currently constructed, I believe there's quite an out at the end of this season for very little dead cap and a lot of cap savings. So I think that was the plan that they had. And then Aaron Rodgers went on his coast-to-coast FU tour last year and won the MVP, and that changes things. So if I'm Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers come to me to restructure, I absolutely will, with one caveat, and that's that I 100% control what you do with that money that I'm going to afford you to spend. This is a team that has never got him a weapon. So I don't know, like if you never take the garbage out and then you go to ask your wife for a favor, what are the odds? It's not happening. So they need to step up and do something for him to do something for them. It's totally a help me, help you situation. I do think that they probably do restructure it at the end of the day, and I agree that he's the starter for probably the next 2 to 3 years. I think Jordan Love is an absolute waste of a pick, unfortunately, because I actually liked him coming out last year. If he had the right opportunity, I think he's going to be wasted now. He's Josh Rosen without getting a chance. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes.
Man,
harsh words.
Hopefully Jordan Love doesn't watch this stream because he's going to get offended by your statements, Mr. Sullivan.
Hey, well, until he has more passing yards than I do, he can be offended. How's that?
Very true. Well said. Yeah, currently on Spot Track looks like after 2022, dead cap goes from 17.2 million to just under 3 million. So if they don't restructure, then yeah, at least another year or so. And the tough thing is, after last year's draft, I had no idea what the Packers were doing. I was like, why are you drafting like a fullback tight end in the 3rd round, a big power back in the 2nd round when you have 2 backs on the roster? Obviously, one's now in Detroit. But that whole draft class didn't make any sense. I thought maybe they just lost their minds for a night or two. But
and it makes even less sense now. Like maybe they were playing the year in advance, but like now it makes even less sense with Aaron Rodgers on his MVP season and them re-signing Aaron Jones. Now you look back at it and you're like, really, what was the plan?
Wasting picks.
And maybe I'm just a bitter Vikings fan, but you take a look at an organization that has had Brett Favre followed by Aaron Rodgers. It's only won 2 Super Bowls is almost mind-boggling. How they've mismanaged almost every other aspect of that organization is ridiculous.
It is surprising, but the way the NFC North is built right now, they can make terrible decisions and still win the division because it is just a train wreck, and Chicago didn't do them any favors bringing on Andy Dalton. I mean, they basically said, "Oh, you want to win the division again? Okay," so it's, I mean, the Packers could still make more bad moves in this draft and still win the division for, another year or two because Minnesota. You obviously talked about it on your wonderful Sully's 2 Cents podcast, but Minnesota's a train wreck right now, and Detroit's,
Yep.
probably 3 years away from even knowing what football is. So I don't know anymore. All right, so that's an elongated news and notes. Let's get to the main topic. So free agency is mostly come and gone. Obviously, you're going to see some names still signed, but nothing that's super fantasy relevant. Sort of. So the bigger names have signed. So I wanted to talk about them tonight and get your guys' opinions. See if it helped their value, hurt their value in your eyes. Obviously, we really won't know until the product's on the field, but I want to get your guys' gut opinions on some of the guys that have signed thus far. We'll start with the big one.
Let's do it.
We'll start with Kenny Golladay to the Giants. He fills out a really deep skill position group, so they've got Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton, still Evan Ingram unless they do something with him, Kyle Rudolph, Saquon Barkley. I mean, they've got a lot of pieces there. It's time for Daniel Jones to put up or shut up. But how do you guys feel about Kenny Golladay going to New York? And as the guest, Simon, you will always get the first shot. You take all the good info and you pass it out, and then we'll just suckle at the teat of whatever's left.
Perfect. At first, of all the places Golladay could have landed, he landed with the Giants, and I felt pretty meh about it. But the more I dug into it, I feel like while I'm not expecting a huge jump from Daniel Jones this following year, like as a passer, I do think Kenny Golladay matches what his strengths are this past season fairly well. Daniel Jones was actually, I know his first year in the league, he wasn't a great deep passer, but last year he was one of the better deep passers in the league. I mean, he was pretty good at getting the ball into those tight windows, and I think Kenny Golladay really accentuates those strengths. I don't want to draw the comparison to Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs connection like we saw this year, but you saw it again, a quarterback getting a wide receiver that really accentuates their strengths, can elevate them to another level. So this makes me a little bit more bullish on Daniel Jones. Kenny Golladay, he's an elite receiver, and if Daniel Jones can get him the ball like I think he can down the field, he's a fringe wide receiver one for me in my mind on that team. He should step in and be the de facto one. I don't see Sterling Shepard or Darius Slayton challenging him for that role. They're just not the same caliber receiver. But I'm actually fairly excited for Daniel Jones compared to how I viewed him beforehand, because I think having a weapon like this that plays to his strengths is going to be huge for him.
Mr. Sullivan.
I was kind of bullish on Daniel Jones last season, and it burnt me kind of bad. And the biggest reason is because he was going to have a full 16 games with Saquon Barkley, and it was 5 quarters. So, but in terms of Kenny Golladay, when you talk about, like Simon pointed out, Daniel Jones was pretty good down the field last year. Kenny Golladay is probably one of the best contested catch wide receivers in the NFL.
Absolutely.
So that's only going to help him. He's a big guy. He's got great body control. He does crazy things. This is a guy that finished 2019, the back half of 2019 as wide receiver 16 in PPR scoring with Jeff Driscoll and David Blau. So Daniel Jones is just fine for Kenny Golladay. And I think one of the really under the radar signings, and I mentioned this on my podcast, is Kyle Rudolph going there. Because Kyle Rudolph allows them to play 12 personnel. That helps Barkley. That helps Daniel Jones, because that offensive line still kind of stinks. And that just helps. And every skilled player position that they add to that offense is just going to make them better. And I'm one of the few guys that still believes in Evan Ingram. So I think Kenny Golladay, this is a great landing spot for him. I think it's one of the better ones that he could have found. Indy might have been a good one as well. The Chargers, perhaps, something like that. But he's going to get fed, and he's going to catch more than he's not. And I think he's got, I think I have about 18 or 19 in my dynasty rankings. But if I'm looking at just the 2021 season, he's probably a top 15 wide receiver, in my opinion.
Well, and you saw, even though New York wasn't the sexiest team last year, you saw Daniel Jones make strides. He wound up being over a 60% completion passer rating at the end of the season, and everything that I saw on Daniel Jones on the field made me go, okay, the kid's making progress. I don't think Jason Garrett is a QB whisperer by any stretch of the imagination, but he at least isn't. Yeah. He knows how to run an offense, and he knows how to make the guys successful, put them in a good spot. I think Daniel Jones, for me, I have him in a couple spots, but if I can acquire him for a reasonable price, I'd take a chance. At this point, he's got the most weapons he's ever had, and if he can't make it with these guys, well, they'll have a new quarterback next year. I mean, this is kind of the make or break
Yeah.
season for Daniel Jones. I'm excited about Saquon coming back. I'm still
Hmm.
buying on him if I can get him. I got him at the trade deadline for quite a bit less than market value last year because I think with these pieces, this team can be much more successful. And the thing that we don't talk about a lot is the Giants' defense is disgustingly good in a lot of areas. So
That secondary is
that
unreal.
secondary is very good, and they keep adding to it. They signed Adoree Jackson this week. The defensive
Yeah.
line is really nice as well. Obviously, I'm an IDP guy, so I have to evaluate those guys too. And outside of the linebacking group, which they could focus on in the draft and find some nice pieces, this team is really surprisingly moving in the right direction. As much as I don't like their leadership, so I like Kenny Galladay. Now all this comes back to I think Kenny Galladay, not Kelly Galladay, Kenny Galladay will be a wise buy option if you can get him because it seems as though people aren't really, they're all sitting in that meh that Simon said earlier. Most people are still living in the meh zone. So if you can get him, I would go after him. I mean, he may turn in back end wide receiver one, high end wide receiver two numbers, but you may be able to get him for back end wide receiver two prices right now because people aren't really sure what to
Yep.
make of it. So I don't own any shares of Golladay anymore, but I would try to get him if the price was right.
I agree. Daniel Jones just has to stop turning over the football, and he should be okay.
Oh, and some of that is part of the maturation process. Is can you be smarter with your reads and going through your progressions and making sure you don't get sloppy. Don't be afraid to take a sack or throw the ball away. And
Well, hold the ball.
Yeah.
That's his biggest thing, right?
Right.
Like he fumbles it like, man, I don't know what he fumbles it like, but it's brutal. But anyway,
he fumbles it like a former New York Giant, Tiki Barber, before he learned how to hold the ball. So.
there you go.
All right. The next one on the list, Dak Prescott. Now, obviously, much has been made about him re-signing 4 years, a crap ton of money. I'm kind of nervous because Mike McCarthy is where people seem to go to die fantasy-wise. Like, I don't even know what to make of it. But, Simon, what do you think about Dak Prescott, that Dallas offense, the team as a whole? Give me your take on how you're feeling about their fantasy value for now and the next few years.
I am so excited. Whenever Dak re-signed, I did a little celebration. Amari Cooper is one of my favorite fantasy players of all time. And back on the Kenny G and now Amari Cooper, these 27, 28-year-old wide receivers, people are leaving for dead in Dynasty. Like they can't produce anymore for 3-4 more years. And there's just like value central with those guys. Well, everyone's paying up for CeeDee Lamb, who I do think is the best wide receiver on that team. Go get a value on Amari Cooper with Dak Prescott coming back. There's room in that offense for 2,000-yard receivers. It's especially with Dak throwing the ball. It's not like there's a scarcity in that offense, especially with the Dallas defense. If they don't improve it this offseason, that offense is going to have to produce, and they've got the weapons to do so. I'm buying into Dak. He's a top 5 dynasty quarterback for me, in my opinion. He was before signing this, but this just affirms he's going to be there with those weapons. I know Amari Cooper has an out after this coming season in his contract, I believe. So it's not likely they retain him, but you never know. Even with CeeDee Lamb, Ezekiel Elliott, Tony Pollard, they've got a good setup there. The player I'm curious about in that offense, the one I don't know what to do with, is a player that was completely hyped up last offseason that we didn't get to see any of this year, is Blake Jarwin.
Yeah.
We saw Dalton Schultz find success in that offense without Dak Prescott. With Dak coming back, and then Blake Jarwin being what we assumed was the better tight end of the two, is he going to step right back into that top tight end role? Is he going to get the bulk of the catches, or will we get like a messy Colts situation like we got last year with just never knowing who was going to be the tight end on the field? But as far as the wide receivers go, I'll take the value on whichever receiver sitting there for the Cowboys. I'm confident that offense is going to move. So in redraft, I likely won't have much CeeDee Lamb, but in Dynasty, unless I drafted him in my rookie drafts, again, I'm targeting Amari Cooper in those trades, not CeeDee Lamb. I think you can get him for a real value right now, and he's got a couple years left of top-tier production.
Mr. Sullivan, what say you?
I don't have much to add to that. That's pretty much spot on. I think they're putting the band back together. Entering last season, Dallas was an offense that I wanted as much of as I could get my hands on, and nothing's changed. I think Ezekiel Elliott is reborn with Dak Prescott running the show. I think I love CD Lamb. I agree with Amari Cooper. I think Michael Gallup has value of a very, very sleepy, sneaky way. And I was a big Blake Jarwin guy last year, and I'm hoping that he comes back and he bounces back and fulfills the role that I thought he had. I'm not really worried about Dalton Schultz doing much in that offense. I think he was there because no one else was. This was a guy that was like tight end 182 or something, the 2 years brief that he played before. So I don't see any fantasy relevance there if Jarwin can stay healthy. But yeah, Simon said it. The Dallas defense is probably still weak. They got to go full on. I don't think Dak is going to put up the numbers that he did in the 4.5 games. They're not going to score 40 points a week, but they can go and they can move and they got the weapons to do it. And I think that the contract is great for Prescott, obviously, and it's good for Cowboys and fans and fantasy managers all around. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I mean, really the biggest issue I see for Dallas at this point, other than Washington, because that defense is amazing, is their offensive line is brutal right now. I mean, that used to be the strong point, but they need some help. They've lost a lot over the few years. Obviously, Travis Frederick, he had to step away early, which was sad. But just in general, there's a lot that needs to be done there. And that's going to have to be the most important thing for them at this point, And when you look at even with Dak out most of last season, I mean, all of their top 3 options still had well over 100 targets. I mean, that's something you want to buy into in fantasy. If you can get any one of these 3 at a good value, I wouldn't be afraid to jump on them. Dalton Schultz is a guy that Dallas did draft, and because Jerry Jones was the one that drafted him, I'm still going to hold some shares of Dalton Schultz because obviously we know he can produce, and just to hedge my bets because I don't know. Like, I was a Blake Jarwin buyer and a big fan, but now that I've seen Dalton Schultz actually produce and Jerry Jones drafted him, so we know, Jerry's going to love his guys. I'm going to try to have a little bit of both just to be safe. But whoever their tight end 1 is, I mean, what are you going to get? 80 to 100, 80 to 90 targets probably. So he's probably getting 50 to 65 catches, 5 to 700 yards, a few touchdowns. I mean, that's unfortunately in this landscape, that's relevant tight end numbers. And I would be okay with it. So really anything in the Dallas offense I'm excited about. The one I want to find out from you guys about, so it really doesn't have anything to do with Dak, is Tony Pollard. It's a name that people are always trying to find out what to do with because we all know that Dak is a QB1. I wanted to slip him in on the back end of this question and kind of get your feel for it because I've had lots of people message me and say, what do I do with Tony Pollard? And my say is, I don't know. I mean, you can stash him and see what happens, but Zeke's the man, so what do you okay, I guess whatever a backup running back's value is to you. So what are your guys' thoughts on Pollard specifically? Is he worth anything to you guys long term? Simon, I'll start with you.
Yeah. The Zeke hate after this past season, specifically on Twitter, got a little out of hand when I'm doing drafts and I see Zeke fall into the 2nd round of a dynasty startup. I just think that's insane. He's still the absolute man there. He's going to pick back up where he left off with Dak back in that offense. Tony Pollard's a good back, and that's not me saying otherwise. He just happens to be behind Ezekiel Elliott. And until that changes, there's not much value besides like a safety net for if Zeke gets injured. I'm in the same page as you. If you've got him, I would hold him. Maybe see if you can get something from the Zeke manager if you can. But until he's out from behind Zeke, there's not much besides a safety net role there with him.
Anything else you want to add, Sully?
No, I think that's about it. I don't have much interest in Tony Pollard's standalone value. I think, you try to flip him over to the Zeke manager. Reminds me a lot of Alexander Madison in Minnesota.
Solid
by
backs.
themselves, they don't do anything, but there's that potential. So Sell the potential and keep the reality.
I like it. There you go. I appreciate it. All right, next up, JuJu Smith-Schuster, everybody's favorite personality, re-signed with Pittsburgh. This was probably the biggest surprise of free agency for me. I really expected him to go elsewhere. 1 year, $8 million. Like, wow, that was kind of a dud move. I mean, he never really panned out as the true wide receiver 1 there, so it seems as though he's on a 1-year prove-it deal with Pittsburgh. What do you guys think about it? What's your gut tell you about JuJu, Simon?
I really question his judgment because he says he took less money because he wanted to stay in Pittsburgh. Who would take less money and you have to stay in Pittsburgh? That seems like a lose-lose deal to me. But outside of that judgment question, I mean, I think he's a wide receiver too going into next year, and then in Dynasty a similar role. After AB left, you saw him kind of shift into that short range target. And I think that's where his role will stay. Chase Claypool's the downfield threat. They're not going to get Juju involved there. They've got Deontay Johnson as well. Juju's a short range target. He'll have volume. I imagine he'll get plenty of volume there. And if the Pittsburgh running game can get going at all, then it should help the passing game. It was abysmal to watch last year. Just how defenses were just torturing Big Ben because they knew there was zero threat of a run game. So hopefully they can get something figured out there, and there might be some upside, but I view him as he's a short range wide receiver. There's not much upside in each individual game. He's going to be a low wide receiver too. I'm not too excited. I was hoping he would land on a team where I could get hyped about it, and instead it's just more of the same.
So you don't like 97 receptions, eh? 128 targets.
The volume. He's gonna get the volume, but it's all
9
what was
touchdowns.
this? He had the lowest average depth of target of any receiver who had more than 50 receptions last year, and then his yards after the catch were pretty abysmal as well. So he's gonna get the volume. It's just not high value targets that he's getting in that offense.
Mr. Sullivan.
You want to fight me on it?
No, I don't want to fight you, but what I really like here is what I think Juju's doing. So he's banking on himself. The salary cap is going to go cuckoo next year compared to this year. So why not play somewhere for 1 year where you know where the good restaurants are and where to park your car downtown? So stick around. He's going to still get a heavy workload. You know, they're going to have Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson on the outside, and he'll do his work in the slot. I don't expect him to wow me. You know, he's not the guy that I once thought he was, who I thought had the ability to be the number one overall wide receiver in fantasy. He's not that guy. At least he's not in a Pittsburgh offense with a quarterback that can throw maybe 10 or 12 yards now. So it's interesting, but I really, really, really like the strategical aspect of this, if it's what I think it is, because I think he has the potential he's going to be 25 years old and an unrestricted free agent at the end of this season. So if he has a half-assed decent season and all the teams can come in and play that have the cap space that they're going to be afforded after the cap goes up, I think he's going to cash in huge. So that doesn't really mean much for fantasy and the average fantasy manager, but I like the mindset for Juju. With one specific part that I don't like is I predicted he was going to go to Kansas City, and that was one of the teams that he turned down. So it really hurts my feelings, Juju, and I know you're watching. So hopefully someone steals your bike again so you can feel sad like me.
Spite.
If you are watching, Juju, that Mr. Sullivan does not speak on behalf of the RotoHeat community. We do appreciate your bike, and we hope you get it back.
Opinions behind Juju. Sorry.
Yeah. He's such an interesting cat, and Sully, everybody in the chat agrees with you. Some of them actually said your statement before you, but you probably did not read the chat, so I won't blame you for stealing other people's words and putting them in your mouth. I think it's an interesting play.
Whoa.
You know, that
sounded like you were accusing me of something there.
No, I just put it out there. So this is now out into the community, and if they want to call you out for taking other people's comments, that's on them, not on me. So, the TV deal isn't done yet. So when the TV deal gets done and we see money go back up, like I get it. I mean, it makes sense if you're kind of reading the tea leaves. I don't know that Juju's ever going to be anything more than a wide receiver too, because look at what's out there. I mean, there's just so many good wide receivers, and Juju has kind of found his niche. You know what he is, and I don't know that that's going to change. Like, Big Ben obviously isn't going to help him change that, because Big Ben ain't getting any younger, and that arm ain't getting any stronger, and that Tommy John's elbow is still going to be as jacked up as it was before. But he's a great receiver. What did he catch? Like 75% of the balls thrown his way last year. I mean, that he's a sure target, and that's not a bad thing. I just don't, I don't know that he's going to go out on the market and get what Kenny Golladay got, because Kenny Golladay has something unique about him. He's that big play type receiver that is massive with a big catch radius. I mean, there's some things there that you're like, okay, I could see why a team paid, 18 million a year for him. But JuJu, he's a very sure receiver. You know what you're going to get. You know that he's going to catch everything that comes his way to the best of his ability. But like Simon said, he's not a yak monster. And, okay, that's great. There's a place for you. Wide receiver 2 it is, and we'll let Chase Claypool be the big play threat, or DeAndre
Yeah, I'm
Johnson.
gonna buy as much. I'm gonna buy as much JuJu Smith-Schuster this offseason as I possibly can. Hopefully, people are join a couple leagues with Simon so I can make sure I get him because he's down on him. But I think sometimes we kind of gloss over a wide receiver 2. Those are good, right? Yeah. Like, most leagues are 10 to 12, sometimes 14, maybe even 16. In those 16 team leagues, there's only 16 wide receiver 1s. Like a wide receiver 2, everybody has room for those guys on their team. And I see JuJu being an absolute buy candidate right now because people are very concerned about Ben Roethlisberger, and that's warranted. That concern is definitely there. We'll see what happens when they go through draft season. If they draft that running back in the first round, might be a bit of a game changer. So, but I like him. I like what he did, and I like where he is, and I want, give me more.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, you can go ahead. I was just going to say, I don't know that his values drop. Like, anybody that I've talked to about buying JuJu, I mean, people are still, I don't think the market's really dropped on him. So it's hard to tell, really, if you can get him at a deal anywhere. What were you going to say, Simon?
I was just going to say, I think it speaks to his talent as a receiver that we are like, whenever I talked, I was clearly kind of disappointed the way I was talking, but I was still talking about him as a wide receiver too. Like you said, like that is good. It's just, I mean, you alluded to it. We truly viewed him as a potential number 1 overall dynasty wide receiver not too long ago. And now we're talking about him as a wide receiver 2, which is still solid. It's just disappointing compared to previous expectations.
Yeah, he just went bonkers in those first 2 seasons, right?
Yeah.
Simon's not mad. He's just disappointed.
I'm just disappointed.
That's a very dad move of you.
That's worse.
Yeah, and if you could, so we say the market's not low on him at the moment potentially. What are you buying him for, Sully? So if there's some poor soul in the community that's actually going to try to buy him right now, what do you pay for him?
I don't know, and I'm terrible at these questions. I'll give you any one of my first round picks in any format for him. How's that? Is that too much?
You give the 1-1?
In a 1 QB league, no. 1-5 down, I would.
About to say probably, obviously we know what the ADP's been showing us, but you're talking Najee, Jamar, something like that.
So I'll say in a 1 QB league, if I had the 106 through 112, I'd happily give it away for him. In a super flex league, probably 8 on down, I would give away for him. I'm not a very good valuing of a trade for a draft pick kind of so-called fantasy analyst. I'm more of a player for player kind of deal guy because I just don't do that very well. But I think I'd be comfortable with, pick 6 to 12. Easy.
Do you need to get Nikolai on the line to make this deal happen?
Wow. Don't talk poorly about my very well respected co-owner in our
you don't know, Simon, is we're in a super flex league together, and he has a co-owner, which I will never co-own a team because it's just exhausting to do anything. But he has a co-owner, so every time I send a trade, I got to talk to Nikolai. So I always make fun of him for it. But.
Well, see that I got nothing. Go carry on.
I know you.
I'll stop.
You got. It's okay. It's all right.
I co-managed the team with Josh and JL this past season for the FSGA league, and I would just send them a final text. I would give them a text, and then if an hour they hadn't responded, I was like, "This is your final warning, or I'm doing it." I would just give them a 1 hour heads up before I made any moves.
It may just be the alpha in me, but I just take control too much. Like I started with a co-owner and immediately said, "No, you're gone. Like I can't do this." I don't want to have to ask for your thoughts on this trade. I'm just going to do what I want to do.
I'm just here to learn and make friends, so I did both in that league, so I'm fine.
Aw, that's sweet.
And I'm gonna win that league this year.
I'm rebuilding, so I don't care. Doesn't matter to me. Well, what are you buying or selling JuJu for? Even though we know that you're disappointed in him, Mr. Simon.
I think he nailed it with the draft picks wise. In Superflex, I might go a little bit low. I don't know. It's tough. That 108, 19 range is probably about where that cap starts. From a player perspective, I don't know, that's tough. I was trying to think of a running back that I value similarly to Juju. And I was having a hard time nailing one down. Maybe like I would definitely trade David Montgomery for JuJu Smith-Schuster. James Robinson was the name I landed on where I had to ask myself, where I couldn't make a decision on the spot. So I think that's probably about where it lies, but I am a bit lower on James Robinson. I'm just completely uncertain about his future there. And I have no idea what they're going to do in that backfield. But James Robinson was probably the player that I landed on where I would sit there and think about that trade for a full day. So that's about where I value him player-wise if you want to do a running back comp.
Yeah, no, that's acceptable. And it's tough in the rookie class because Jamar Chase, I think, has probably got a better outlook than Juju long term. But then after that, I'm like, okay, so Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, I don't know. And so, once you get to 1-5 and on, I'm perfectly fine having that conversation for Juju. So those are all well said, gentlemen. Well said. Okay, so the New England Patriots bought every tight end they could find. I know that everybody got excited and thought Aaron Hernandez and Rob Gronkowski, this is going to be huge. I don't know that either one of these are that at all. So what are we doing with the New England tight end room? Plus, you remember they drafted 2 tight ends last year, Devin Asai and Dalton Keene. I mean, now they got, 4 tight ends on the roster. I don't even know what to make of it. I have Jonnu shares. I don't have any Hunter Henry shares. But I'm not really sure I want to have any shares right now. Simon, what do you think about this Patriots tight end room?
I mean, you alluded to it. People are looking for the Aaron Hernandez, Rob Gronkowski role. So I started looking at that a little bit, and it's very rare that teams produce 2 fantasy-relevant tight ends. You can look at those Patriots teams, and you can look at one year of the Eagles doing it with Ertz and Goddard both being top 8 tight ends. But the big difference between those offenses and the Patriots offense of last year with Cam Newton is those teams both threw for more than 600 pass attempts that season. New England threw for like 450 this year. They just don't have the passing volume with Cam Newton at quarterback to support 2 fantasy-relevant tight ends. If I had to pick between the 2, I think Jonnu Smith is the better signing for the Patriots for football, from what he brings from a blocking perspective. But for fantasy, I think Hunter Henry is going to be the primary pass catcher. I think he'll end the season with more targets than Jonnu Smith does, but I'm more excited about what this means for Cam Newton than I am about what it means for either tight end. We saw what he did with Greg Olsen. He likes to target these big body receivers, these tight ends in the end zone. So it's a plus for me for Cam. It's meh for the 2 tight ends for me, especially Jonnu. Unfortunately, Jonnu, I've been so excited about him, and he's been awesome with the opportunity he's been given, but I was hoping he would go to a team that gave him more opportunity than the Tennessee Titans did, and I'm not sure that's what's going to happen in New England with Hunter Henry there as well.
Yeah. What say you, Mr. Sullivan?
Simon, you like to play fantasy football games, so I have a game we're going to play right now.
Let's do it.
Cam Newton threw 368 passes last year. Let's say he throws 368 passes this year. Where do the targets go? Who leads that team in targets?
370 to Jacoby Myers. I'm just kidding. No. Yeah, I have no idea who leads the team in targets. If I had to guess, it very well could be one of the tight ends. But
right. So let's say this, and this
Hunter
is
Henry leads the league. If I had to guess a player, I would say Hunter Henry.
The roundabout way of me trying to make a smart ass point is Kendrick Bourne and Nelson Aguilar don't really scare me that much. James White is probably moving on, so I don't think there's going to be a whole lot coming out of that backfield catching passes. Jonnu Smith is an incredibly athletic tight end, so I think you're going to see that guy lining up all over the place. Hunter Henry probably stays inside a little bit more and plays more of that traditional tight end. Now, this isn't Hernandez and Gronkowski, and Cam Newton isn't Tom Brady, but someone's going to catch passes there. Well, one of those tight ends was a killer, by the way. Someone's going to catch passes in that offense. And it's probably going to be those 2 tight ends that lead the team in targets and receptions. Where I don't love this for fantasy is specifically in the red zone. I think in short, confined spaces, those 2 tight ends cannibalize each other. And let's face it, Cam is going to tuck it and run whenever he can inside the red zone. So I was huge on Jonnu last year. I had him inside my top 12. He just missed it. I probably have, I have Hunter at tight end 9 in my dynasty rankings right now, and I already know I need to move him down. And Jonnu's at about 14. I think they're probably going to end up back-to-back in my rankings just outside the top 12, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're both back-end top 12 tight ends. Top 12 tight ends average like 9.5 point PPR points a week, so that's not a whole heck of a lot. So I think they're both fantasy relevant, and at the end of the day, I want JuJu Smith over Hunter Henry because I see the potential upside, and Hunter's always going to have whether it's warranted or not, the injury stuff hanging over his head. So I don't love it for these guys, but I don't think it's quite as bad as a lot of us are painting it to be.
In all honesty, I think these two could be their top receiving options by the end of the season. I mean, I like Jacoby Myers, but I don't love him. I think he probably has less targets and receptions than he did this year, just because they're not passing the ball downfield a lot. Think about the guys that left. So Damiere Byrd went to Arizona. Obviously, like you said, James White's not coming back. I mean, what is that? That was like 130, 140 of the targets. Rex Burkhead, Ryan Izzo aren't on the team. Well, Rex Burkhead's always on the team. I shouldn't say that. He'll probably be on the team because he'll never leave the team. Julian Edelman is still there. I don't know why. And you've already heard trade rumor possibilities with N'Keal Harry. Maybe. There's easily 150 targets to go around. Now, obviously, they've added 4 players, 2 wide receivers, 2 tight ends, whatever they do in the draft. It wouldn't surprise me at the end of the year if Smith or Henry were in the top 2-3 of the receiving on the team, just because Bill Belichick's going to look at these chess pieces and go, okay, what do we do? What can we do? What's the potential? And Cam Newton's not a deep ball thrower. I mean, the guy, think about what he's done in his history. It's just not much. So, it wouldn't surprise me if Smith or Henry is a tight end 1. One of the two. I can't see them both being there, but one of them will probably be back in tight end 1. This is the perfect year for something like that because the tight end room is in such flux. Zach Ertz had a down year. There's a potential for moving there. The rookies that are coming in are awesome. I mean, there's 4 or 5 of them that are really nice, but tight ends, take a little while to get up to speed. I mean, so this is the perfect time for New England to produce a fantasy relevant tight end. But I would put a little bit on both. I wouldn't spend much money to get either of them. And I'm definitely not going to be a buyer. I mean, I'd probably sell if somebody was paying me something that's worth market value for either. But I think I have some JuJu Smith shares. And I think I've basically got a bunch of lowball offers as soon as Hunter Henry signs. So I'll sit on them, wait and see what happens. But I don't know what to make of it. I liked both tight ends very, very well. Hunter Henry has always been that sexy name everybody wants to climb in bed with, but just always kept getting hurt. Where JuJu Smith has kind of been up and down, a little bit of the same. So your guess is as good as mine. I think your guys' takes are good on it, but I would put a chip on either or and just see what happens. If you need tight end help, and hopefully you don't overpay to get them. If you do, shame on you. You should know better.
Well said.
Not really shame on you. I mean, it is what it is. You got to do something. So, all right. Wow, it's already 10:19. Okay, show's getting close to being over. So I want to take some time and just let you guys kind of spitball. So did anything happen in free agency that got you excited? Obviously a lot's happened in the last week and a half. We've got trades galore that were finalized, Stafford to LA, Goff to Detroit. I mean, what happened in the last couple weeks that got you excited, if anything? Maybe you weren't excited. Mr. Simon, the floor is yours.
I actually really like the AJ Green to Arizona move. I think it makes sense for Arizona, and I think AJ Green was a decent receiver when he's been healthy recently. He's moving to a less crowded room. We still don't know if Fitz is signed there officially yet, right?
I heard he was going to free agency for the first time ever, so I guess he hasn't.
So I think AJ Green's got a role in that offense. I think he could be number 2 in receptions behind DeAndre Hopkins come the end of the year in Arizona. And could be a great value in redraft this year or in Dynasty if you're making a run. You could get AJ Green probably really on the down low since he's nearing the end of his career. And it could be a sneaky flex play for you all year. So AJ Green, I know it's not the big flashy name like it should be or has been in years past, but I think he's going to have a decent role down there in Arizona.
Well, and you got to remember, in 2019, wasn't he out for most of the season? So 2020, he was trying to get his legs back under him. Rookie quarterback, terrible offensive line, running back couldn't show up half the time because he was hurt. I mean, you can't put it all on AJ Green. You know,
No.
guys take time to bounce back from injury, especially when they miss such a significant amount of time. Mr. Sullivan, what do you think about AJ Green going to Arizona?
He missed a season and a half, really, right? Like I think he missed all of 2019 and he missed the back half of 2018. He was wide receiver 10 in 2017 was his last fantasy relevant season. The man had 100 targets last year, which is kind of sounds crazy. He caught 40 something of them. So that's a product of quarterbacks not having any time with a very poor offensive line, a rookie quarterback, and then two backup quarterbacks. So I think he's got a little bit of tread left on his tire. I think he's absolutely free if you want to go buy him. He's not anyone that I have on my wish list, but at the same time, if I'm doing a startup and I'm in some double-digit rounds and there's a bunch of guys that are, Demir Bird or AJ Green, that's a no-brainer, right? So you might as well take those types of shots when you have them. And if you have him on your roster, hang on. Don't throw him away for a back-end fourth-round rookie pick. Hold on to AJ Green and see what he can do. He's in the right offense for it, right? They're going to run 4 or 5 wide as much as they possibly can. They like to do that. So he'll get targets, and I think he's got a better quarterback than he did before, so probably the best he's ever had. So why not? I don't mind it.
Yeah, well, and think about what Arizona's lost. If Fitz doesn't sign back, obviously, I believe Dan Arnold's moved on. I mean, that's over 100 targets right there that are gone just between those two. And that isn't even factoring in Kenyan Drake. Kenyan Drake had 31 targets, so there's plenty of targets to go around if AJ Green continues to get healthy and get back at it. I mean, this could be a huge signing and a huge buy for you as an owner.
I've had a crazy man crush on Andy Isabella for 2 years now, and I'm praying that those somehow one day come to fruition, but we'll see.
Yep. A boy can dream, right? Mr. Sullivan, have at it.
Yeah. 2 guys that I really like that are both sort of under the radar. I really like Gerald Everett in Seattle. I was really, really hoping he was going to go to the Chargers where Jared Cook went. But I do think that, again, another really athletic tight end that it's going to have an opportunity to be a top 12 tight end, I believe. And Josh Reynolds in Tennessee is wickedly exciting for me. They don't have anybody else. It's A.J. Brown and Ferkser and him right now. So, Corey Davis has moved on. JuJu Smith has moved on. They're not going to throw the ball a ton, but they have a new OC, so maybe they will throw the ball a little bit more. Derrick Henry's a year older. He's got 400 more touches on the chassis, so we'll see what happens there. I like those 2 guys. Nothing really flashy, and there's a couple of guys that are hanging around out there still. I'm still wondering where James Conner lands. I still think that man has a little bit of upside, and the longer he goes unsigned, the lower his value is. So I'm circling him on a watch list as well. Who are your guys, Brad?
I actually, in one of our Discord chats, I don't remember when, but during the week I said, man, this has been I've loved that it's been so active, but on the other side, I'm like, this has been the most ridiculously boring free agent period because so many of the moves that happen, I'm like, well, that doesn't really make me excited for fantasy. The only one that I'm really excited for the here and now is Ryan Fitzpatrick to Washington. Ryan Fitzpatrick, I mean, yes, we know that he is going to throw interceptions. He'll have a game where he'll throw 5 interceptions, but he's also, as the back half of his career has gone on, he's become a much more efficient passer. He's still got enough arm to get the stuff down the field. Like Washington made the playoffs last year with nothing at quarterback, and I think they'll make the playoffs again with a guy that at least is okay at quarterback. And for fantasy purposes, especially, in redraft formats, I think he's a sneaky back-end QB1. I mean, think about the pieces that they have. Whether it's McLaurin, now Curtis Samuel coming over. You've got Logan Thomas, Antonio Gibson. Lamar Miller is now there. So, obviously, fantasy relevance has come back to Washington. I mean, there's just a lot to like about that offense. The offensive line is not bad. It's probably a better than average offensive line. And obviously I had forgotten, but Mr. Sullivan on your podcast mentioned that they tagged Brandon Scherf. So I remember now that they have probably one of the better offensive linemen in the league as a guard.
I liked that move.
You know, I think Fitz is in a good spot to just kind of step in and lead the team. Now, obviously, he's not a long-term guy. Probably 1 year, maybe two. I mean, the guy's got enough tread on the tires that as long as the arm doesn't fall off and he doesn't want to just quit because, you know, he's like the smartest, most interesting man on the planet. What has he got, his Harvard degree and all the other crazy stuff he's been through? You know, he could be relevant and he could be cheap. I mean, if you've got him, you can sell him now because he's probably a starting quarterback. And I'm okay with that. So that's the only one for me that's really anything, I mean, fantasy relevant.
I like it. I like it. And it makes me remember that I forgot Curtis Samuel. I think that's a really, really nice signing, reuniting with Rivera and Turner in that offense. I don't think Fitz has that top 12 aspirations, but I do see him middle of the road QB2 for sure. And he's fun. Like, how do you not like Ryan Fitzpatrick, right? He's got crazy ass beard, shows up to press conferences looking like, you know, some 70s disco dude. And I think people feel a little bit bad for him last year, to be honest. I think he deserved a better fate last year. I really, really like the guy. I hope he does really well. I think Washington and New York are the class, if you can say that, of the NFC East. I think that division is better. But yeah, that's a good call on Fitzpatrick. It's fun, if nothing else.
Yeah.
Do you think someone brought this up the other day? Do you think Curtis Samuel eats into that receiving role that J.D. McKissic carved out this past year? I hadn't even considered that the wide receiver signing could take some of that away, but I know people are looking at J.D. McKissic as a late round value again this year. But Curtis Samuel and maybe Antonio Gibson progressing as a run blocker or a pass blocker, could get him involved more there. The Curtis Samuel signing kind of put the nail in the coffin for me, drafting McKissic late.
Well, and with having a viable quarterback, that offense is going to be able to do more. You're going to have more pass attempts. You're going to be able to do more on the running game. Like, I think McKissic could still have a role, but I don't think it'll be nearly as strong because Curtis Samuel, I mean, you saw what Carolina did with him, with Rivera and without Rivera. You can line him up all over the field. You can have him out of the backfield, jet sweeps. You can put him in the slot. I mean, whatever you want to do with him. So as long as, you know, Fitz doesn't fall off a cliff and this offense go with him, I think he can make at least two wide receivers, a tight end, and one, possibly two running backs relevant, at least semi-relevant. But McKissic, you know, I don't know that he'll ever really be what he was last year. I mean, because they really needed to lean on that running game.
Yeah, I don't see him leading. I think he led all running backs in targets last year, if I'm not mistaken. I think he may have had 100 targets. I'm not sure. I do think that impacts it, but I do think that Curtis Samuel is going to impact Antonio Gibson as well. Like, I think it's going to there's just less touches for everyone, you know, and I think the biggest benefactor of Curtis Samuel is Terry McLaurin because it's going to keep defenses a little bit more honest. Logan Thomas, that we haven't even mentioned yet, is a component there. And I don't know who's going to be on the other side. I guess Steve Sims, is he currently the guy that would be on the outside on the other side?
Yeah, they have Cam and Steve Sims. They are both there. Probably Steven Sims would be my guess. But, you know, with the way that the draft could fall out, they could draft another receiver. I mean, they don't have huge
There's a ton
needs.
of receivers in this draft.
So, I don't know. I would leave that up for, you know, TBD at this point.
J.D. McKissic made me a few bucks last year, so it makes me a little sad. But, yeah, I think if you can sell him for anything close to the value that he gave you last year, I recommend you do that in a heartbeat.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Absolutely. That's it. It is getting to 10:30.
Yeah.
Our hour ran very quickly. And with Simon on, it was even more enjoyable.
Let's go for another hour. Simon's fun.
Rick and
Man, usually people tell me time goes slower when I'm around.
Really?
Well, that's just because you.
My teachers growing up, at least, all had that same thing to say.
Oh.
I can tell you that the fastest hour of my week is 3 to 4 Eastern, Monday to Friday, when I am watching your live stream. It's a blast, and it flies by.
Yeah,
I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and I appreciate you being on the show, Simon. I mean, you guys are a blast. You know, getting to watch you guys every day is definitely a highlight. I love when YouTube pops up and reminds me to watch. So make sure if you guys aren't subscribed to Front Yard Fantasy on YouTube, go over there, do it. Hit the notification icon. Let's get their channel up to 1 million subscribers right now. Do it.
1 million.
Everybody.
Perfect.
Just make it happen.
That'd be cool.
I wanted to thank you guys, not just for bringing me on. Thank you for bringing me on, but also the support that you guys and everyone over at RotoHeat has shown to us at Front Yard Fantasy. It's been awesome. You've already helped immensely. And on top of that, we've gotten to start hanging out with some cool guys over there. So yeah. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Our door's wide open. You can let JL and Josh know that they're welcome here as well, and you can.
I'm not
Josh
sure you want to leave your door open for them.
You can let him know that trading makes fantasy fun here as well.
Perfect.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, thank you guys, everybody that's made the chat enjoyable tonight. The chat has been blowing up mostly with comments, not questions. But if you guys have questions, we've got Discord, we've got Twitter. Our boy Simon told you his Twitter. Feel free to blow up his DMs and ask him questions. I'm sure he would love to ignore them or answer them if he feels like he wants to. We are here to help. We've got a Facebook community that's growing, thousands and thousands. We've got Discord that's growing. We're not to the millions, but we're aiming to get there. So we thank you guys for hanging out with us. We will be back again next week. This is the first show of the Tuesday season, or of the Tuesday show of this season. But we're going to keep going. Sully and I will be here next week. We will have on somebody, but we will make sure that Simon comes back soon because we love Simon. We love the FYF guys. Thank you as always. Thank you, everybody. We love you guys, and we'll talk to you again Thursday night because I'll be back on your Thursday night because I love to sit on YouTube with you. So we love you guys, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Adios.
Peace.